guys, what's up? Thanks for stopping by the channel and for watching this video. Hopefully you guys all can get something out of it. The reason I wanted to make this video was because when I made this beat, I did things quite a bit differently than usual. So I thought that it might be interesting to make a quick little track breakdown video. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but when I'm making a song, usually one of two things is happening. Either I'm actually really having to think a lot and I'm using my brain to plan things out and thinking logically about all these different situations and choices and things. And then other times I feel like I'm not the one driving, I'm just a passenger and I'm there to just observe, and it seems like the music almost makes itself. It just comes together so easily without any kind of thinking. Usually when that happens, that's the stuff that I end up liking better. So I was working on a track pretty much exclusively on the OP and was having to think a lot and kept trying to come up with different ideas and different directions. And so I pulled out the SP just to kind of like switch up the workflow, and pretty much immediately came across this sample that I had completely forgotten about. And once I heard that, I scrapped everything that I was working on and started working on something that went around this sample. And of course, once I started doing that, bam, it came together super fast and easy, just like I was explaining a second ago. So let me play the sample for you. So there's more to it obviously, but all I really wanted was that guitar by itself. I actually didn't even end up using the second measure, and I just kept the first measure only, and I just basically made a loop of that, which is here. So before creating this loop, I basically took the sample, I got to the part that I wanted to sample, and using the OP, since it has a tap tempo, I just tapped out the tempo. That was my first step basically. So once I had the tempo, I found a drum kit and I got this little tambourine sound, and I just made a very simple So I just made that little loop. The point of that was so that I could then create this loop, and I would know that this loop is perfectly looping on time to 137 BPM. The thing about chopping up samples on here, if you want it to loop accurately to the BPM, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass. It just takes time. You gotta really get in there and adjust the start and end point of the sample correctly to make sure that it's looping at the right BPM. So I basically did that. I had this going. And so that was it. The next thing that I wanted to do was create a drum beat. So as part of that, I knew that I could use that tambourine line, but I would also want a different, I wanted something that had a hi-hat in it. So I basically went and made this. I just hit record, played out my hi-hat pattern. I didn't use a sequencer, and you'll be able to tell here. which was good enough for me to then make a drum beat over. So I had a kick and snare on here. And I just kind of messed around by playing this hi-hat loop, playing the music loop, and then playing kick and snare over it live. Through that, I then figured out a basic kick snare pattern and essentially just used the resample feature and resampled myself playing that kick snare pattern over on pad number 3. I basically hit play and had this hi-hat pattern playing in my headphones while playing kick snare over here resampling. That way the thing that I was resampling on this pad would for sure be in time with the hi-hat loop that I had over here. Next, I knew that I wanted a synth sound. I just kind of played around with some synth sounds and came across this. I just had to make a lot of adjustments with this to make sure that everything was in the right key. This does create like different harmonies. So yeah, after plenty of adjustments, I was able to make this kind of sound here, which I then recorded a melody. Alright, so that was the first melody that I made to go with this. I also realized that I needed a variation on that. So again, same synth sound, just kept on messing around with it and changing octaves around, changing the LFO, and it ended up getting this. So there's that. So you can see how the one goes into the other. Next up, it was time for a bass. So again, with the synthesizer, found a bass sound. So it was this one. Nice and subby. Basically just used that and created quite simple bass line. So you can hear that there's quite a bit of drive on it. That's because I used just a real simple technique. I played out the bass line how I wanted it, and then I sampled it into the SP, and then I went to the MFX and put a distortion on it. There is number 7, it's a distortion. There's also, I can't remember if I used distortion, overdrive, or fuzz, one of those. But yeah, so I basically just distorted it a little bit. I saved it to its own patch, and then I put the low pass filter on it, and then re-recorded it back into here like that, which is why it has all that drive to it. One of the last things I did was I needed more melody, so I started playing around more with the synths, and I found this really cool one and was able to do a lot of tweaking with the sounds of it. Had the filter on. Can make all these changes to this thing. As you can see, like, every turn creates quite a change. And it was when I was messing with that I started to think to myself, there's so much variation that can happen. It would probably be beneficial for me to just sequence something, which is what I did. So I went to this sequencer here, arpeggio. With this, you can basically just play in chords. So that's what I did, only I used the hold feature. The main reason for me using the hold feature was basically because it allows me to not only jump around to different screens, like from the sequencer screen to the tape screen to the synth screen, the LFO, the effects, whatever. I can jump from all these different screens, and while doing that, also make a whole bunch of different parameter changes in real time while the hold's keeping the arpeggiation going. So as you can see, a million variations. So I kind of messed around with that and ended up recording some of that. So I'll just play that real quick. Little percussion. Anyway, so yeah, I have that whole thing recorded, and you could hear I had those little percussion things happening, so that way there's a little bit of variation in the drums. So I had that. And then the bass changed as well. I had a bass variation. But that's about it. So I felt like I still needed some other stuff. I ended up finding some funny, well, not funny, very serious samples from Tyson talking about how he smoked the Sonora Desert Toad Venom, which contains 5-MeO-DMT, and how that changed his life. So
listen, before I involved myself with the toad, I ain't think nobody could tell me shit. Like, fuck, I realized I didn't know anything. I realized I was afraid all those years. I was actually afraid. I was so afraid I didn't know how to live without my ego. And that was a real scary situation for me. You know, I used to know what to do. I thought I was dying. I'm missing my kids, my wife, everything's leaving me. Fuck.
So I had those as well. So basically, what's so different about this is that usually I arrange the song pretty meticulously. This time I just had all these different parts. And so I ran these two machines into the Tascam and basically just hit record, and with everything I had here, just created this long, I think it was like a 20-minute long jam session basically. I did record that with the camera, and I made a video of that as well, so I'll put a link to that. If you want to, you can go and check out the actual live jam that I did using these machines and all those parts that you just saw. After I recorded that jam on here, I rewinded back to the beginning and hit record again, and on the separate channel, on channel 4, is when I overdubbed these vocal parts. So I did everything live except for the vocal parts, which I went back and put in separately on its own channel. So at the end of that all, I had this long 20-minute fucking crazy jam, and of course I'm not going to release that. I'm not going to put that on my on a beat tape or anything. So what I had to do then was take this 20-minute jam and just find all of the parts that I really liked, and of course using a DAW, I rewinded the tape, hooked the tape player up to the computer, pushed play on the tape, and recorded the entire taped jam into digital. Now that I had it all in digital world, I was able to just grab the things that I wanted and cut and paste and put together my own little, like a 2.5-3 minute long version of the song basically. So yeah, it was a really weird way of doing it, but it was fun, and I might actually end up doing it more that way, because not only do I get a finished production out of it, but I also get to like have a really fun experimental jam, which is always a good time. I hope this was somewhat interesting, and thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe to the channel. Peace.